If you slept in this morning, we're happy to be the ones to wake you up before you go. Or maybe last night you were kissing a fool and now you need some faith that you'll get that monkey off your back and finally find some freedom. If you're a Wham, or more specifically a George Michael fan, then you may have caught those song titles. He passed away in 2016, but with every great singer, they live forever through their music. You have one more try to see the next best thing actually perform those pop hits in concert on July 9th.
Strong man, baby, but I'm showing you the door. 'Cause you gotta have faith. But man's got his patience, and here's where mine ends. I want your sex. Oh, we have to see, yeah, that I don't belong to you, and you don't belong to me. Wake me up, party go right. Take me dancing tonight. Wanna hear that?
Looks just like him. All right, Robert Bartko stars as George Michael Reborn. He's been called the world's greatest George Michael and Wham tribute artist, and we caught up with him before his recent Houston concert.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to find out how you got here. So, music is in your family background.
Yeah, throughout, I have fond memories of sitting at my grandpa's feet, who was from Czechoslovakia, playing polkas. And when he passed away, he left me that guitar.
Aww.
So yeah, it's and I had an uncle that was a well-respected drummer that in Ohio, that a lot of bands such as Herb Alpert and such would come through. He was their drummer locally there. Yeah.
So in the commercial break, we were joking. You said I was a weird kid. Well, you were a creative kid, but you were one of those kids who was also well-rounded. You played football. You were a football jock, but you also sang.
Yeah, those are, I think, generally like two worlds that don't gel well together, but I somehow managed to live in both worlds really well. I played football. I had actually three scholarships to small colleges as a running back. I was super fast, super tiny, but super fast. And then I'd also sing in the drama club. And I remember when we did a play of Grease, and I was John Travolta.
Look at that.
So yeah.
And so those are great things to have and to do in school. But oftentimes parents will say, "That's nice. We love that you're creative. We love that you're athletic, but don't look at either one of those as a career necessarily, because it's so competitive and so tough." So your dad just wanted to make sure that you got your college education.
Yeah, I think my dad was he was definitely always trying to steer me away from going into music, but it was just pretty much undeniable. But he's like, you need a backup plan. So, I went through college, got a dual major in marketing and management, but music was always in my blood.
Yeah.
You just can't get it out.
When did you first hear George Michael?
Oh my goodness. So, let me see how I could answer this without going too long. In the 80s, when Wham was becoming popular, I had so many people saying to me, "My goodness, you look just like this new singer out of the UK, George Michael, and this group Wham. Have you ever heard of him?" And I said, people have been saying this to me a lot.
Your teacher said it to you in school?
Oh goodness, yeah. And then in answer to your question, was the first time I heard Wham, I'd gone over to a friend's house, and he said, "Dude, I just got this new Wham record, and you look just like the singer from it." I said, "Everybody's telling me," he's like, "Well, do you want to hear it?" And when he put the record on, it was amazing. I had grown up listening to a lot of R&B and soul singers, but when I first heard George Michael's voice, it was like I had been introduced to a long lost friend, like my long lost brother.
You must have lost your mind when you went to the first concert.
Oh yeah, and I went to two of them during his Faith tour. Yeah.
Okay, so in the 1990s, you got into the music business. You produced songs. You had your own band and still your own sound. At what point did you think, okay, our own sound and our own band, my own music, all that's great, but I think I'm going to slide into being George Michael?
Well, I always say, I don't know if I ever even slid into, I feel like it chose me, tributing him chose me, because, dovetailing off of my story, everybody was saying I looked like him, but then when his music started to become popular and I would open my mouth and sing in various plays and dramas, people were like, "My gosh, you not only look like him, you sound like him."
Yeah.
And
then people actually thought that you were him a couple of times, where it was like, you're like, "Why is everyone rushing toward me? Why are they screaming?"
Yes.
Right?
In 1988, I went to the his Faith tour, came through South Florida where I was growing up, and I saw him live in the Miami Orange Bowl. And I went and I was dressed like him. And I swear I almost lost my life that night, because people were picking me up and surfing me on top of the crowd. I was fifth row and center and getting tossed around and such.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was
And then he's one of those artists who passed away way too soon, passed away on Christmas Day in 2016.
I remember it.
And that had to hit you really hard, but it also opened this door. I think, the interesting thing about when anybody like, movie stars or singers pass away, it's interesting because they're timeless through what they've left behind. Their music is still there. And then it opens that door for you to present his music in just another level, right? As opposed to just listening to it. People in new generations can experience George Michael in a way that would not be possible otherwise. You were refocused on your original music, but the sellouts were the George Michael tributes.
Yeah, I mean, people are just so in love with his music still, just as I am. And I remember when I first got my first show booked in 2019 was at the Anaheim House of Blues, and it sold out beyond capacity. Line was a mile around the building. So. Yeah, his music is still touching people's lives.
You played with Dion Estes, who was the bass player with Wham, right?
Yes, that was one of the highlights of you can see him there in the video clip. One of the highlights of my life when I got a call from his manager saying, do you know who Dion Estes is? I said, of course I do. He's like my childhood hero. She said, well, he loves your show. He sees you're going to be in LA. He wants to join you on stage. Can that happen? I was like, of course it can.
Yeah, right. And in fact, there was a little bit of talk about can we put Wham back together with you as playing the frontman.
Yeah, Dion and I hit it off. If anybody's ever had the joy of meeting Dion Estes, you immediately become a friend with him. He was one of the kindest souls you'd ever meet, and we just hit it off and played a couple of shows together. COVID shut us down, but we kept in touch throughout COVID, and we were talking about, hey, maybe we can get Andrew Ridgeley on board and let's see what we can do with this, you know?
When you look at the video, it looks like everybody just has a great time. And there's an advantage to, so you've had both. You've done original songs where people kind of sit there and go, okay, that's nice. But when you can sing along to something and that familiarity in music, that's what makes a concert even extra fun.
It really does. I'm really fortunate. I mean, George Michael just cooked up these incredible recipes, and I get the honor of, going around serving them up still, these songs, People know them, love them, and so get ready to get on your feet and dance and sing along.
Yeah, and please don't tackle the man. He keeps getting tackled. But what's the importance of keeping the music of yesterday alive? And there's different ways to do that. Obviously, it's always there. But when you bring it to the forefront, someone may not have been thinking about it, but when you do a concert like this, you bring it to the forefront. What's the importance of that in society?
Oh my goodness! I mean, it would just be heartbreaking to think of George Michael's music or any greats of the past just faded into being forgotten. I mean, this music is amazing.
And I love one of your quotes is you say, an artist's music is just a generation away from dying.
Yeah, it is, and my kids have grown up on Wham and George Michael.
Of course they have. It's their dad. Well, thank you for keeping it alive.
Thank you.
And I like the way you updated the pearls. This is good.
Well, thank you.
The new look for pearls right here. I love all that. Okay.
You can catch Robert Bartko and the George Michael Reborn Tribute Show Thursday, July 9th at 8 p.m. at Main Street Crossing in Tomball. His shows always sell out, so get your tickets today. For more information, visit greatdayhouston.com for links. We'll be right back.